Welcome to the Oakland University Archives housed at Kresge Library. My name is Dominique Daniel, and I have been the coordinator of archives and special collections for the past 7 years. I am here today to share with you some of our photos and publications that illustrate what it was like to be a student at OU in the second half of the 1960s. At the time, OU was trying to grow large gracefully, to use the words of its chancellor, Woody Varner. In 1967, the university celebrated the 10th anniversary of its founding, and in 1969, the 10th anniversary of the enrollment of its charter class. But I want to start in the fall of 1966 by perusing one issue of the Oakland Observer. The September 9, 1966 issue of the Observer reveals what growing large gracefully meant for students. It illustrates some aspects of life at OU, and here are some examples. Jazz artist Dave Brubeck kicked off the Meadowbrook series in fall 1966. Observer editor Mike Honey explained the draft situation during the Vietnam War with the help of OU's registrar. Student enrollment was soaring. The student body reached 3,142 from 570 only in fall 1959. The bookstore advertised its services, and there's some nice photos of the store and of the students in it. Under the headline, "Storms in Kresge Library," the Observer deplores the lack of study space and students' competition for it. In fact, the library, as well as other facilities on campus, were in desperate need of expansion. Parking was also becoming a problem, so OU set up strict rules and a registration fee. At the same time, Chancellor Varner welcomed freshmen with his usual warmth, assuring students that OU cared about each and every one of them in spite of enrollment growth. Finally, the 6th-dorm Vandenberg Hall was nearing completion. The entire archive of the Oakland Observer and the student newspapers that succeeded it have been digitized and are available online for you to browse. It was clear to everyone on campus that there was not enough space for the growing student body, although the number of buildings had already expanded from 2 to 18. So the administration announced an ambitious 5-year building program of $46 million for several new buildings, starting with breaking ground for Dodge Hall of Engineering. There were also not enough dormitories, although the 6th dorm was being completed and plans for the 7th dorm were underway. The September 9 issue of the Observer describes residents moving into unfinished Vandenberg Hall and dodging construction workers. What else was happening in fall 1966? Matilda Wilson celebrated her 83rd birthday. Every year, her birthday on October 19 was the unofficial homecoming for the university, and Mrs. Wilson's weekend was a social highlight on campus with a formal birthday ball. This was to be her last opportunity to celebrate with OU students as she passed away on September 19, 1967. You can see here the Observer's announcement with information on the funeral service and a day of mourning at OU. OU's First Lady, as she was often called, did participate in the celebration of OU's 10th anniversary on the 3rd of January 1967, 10 years after she and her husband donated their estate to Michigan State University. In January 1957, MSU made public the news that the Wilsons had given them the entirety of Meadowbrook Farms to build a new university, along with $2 million for the first building. Shortly after that, Woody Varner was appointed by MSU President John Hanna to lead the initiative, and North and South Foundation halls rose from the ground on the west side of the estate. The first students were admitted in fall 1959. Under the remarkable leadership of Chancellor Varner, Oakland grew by leaps and bounds in the next 10 years. The original name, Michigan State University Oakland, was replaced by Oakland University in 1963, although it was still officially part of Michigan State. It was only in 1970 that the separation was complete. This photo, taken June 24, 1970, shows Michigan Governor William Milliken signing into law a bill giving OU its independence, effective July 1st. 2 months later, he announced the appointment of charter members to OU's new Board of Trustees. Donald O'Dowd, who had served as Chancellor since Woody Vonner's departure in February 1970, became OU's first president. The archives of Oakland contain a lot of materials that document its academic growth in the late 60s. Oakland Undiapered is the title of a new publication put together by students in which they evaluated their professors to help their peers choose their classes. I mentioned there were some 3,000 students at OU in 1966. By 1970, there was more than double that number. At that time, what could these students learn here? Well, great things, according to Chancellor Vonner in The Observer. He assured students that OU faculty were, I quote, not restricted to any established tradition, underlining a key aspect of the curriculum, its creativity. Students were also promised personal attention from faculty and staff. Starting from scratch in 1959, the university had enlisted some of the best experts in higher education in the country to determine the values and principles of its curriculum. This is what came to be known as the Meadowbrook Seminars, because they took place at Meadowbrook Hall. The university then hired young PhD graduates from top universities, so much so that the charter faculty were more educated than those at most American colleges. At first, Oakland offered a limited number of programs. It focused on liberal arts and science, teacher education, business administration, and engineering. The 1966-67 course catalog, which you can also find online, promised students an effective community of learning. It estimated that the semester at OU cost $334 for commuters, including tuition, transportation, books, and lunches. To reside on campus, the cost would be $679. Can you imagine? One of the things that distinguished the curriculum was its emphasis on what was then called non-Western civilizations. 2 semesters were required so students could learn the languages and cultures of Russia, China, India, and Latin America. A new general education course was called Freshman Explorations, with multiple sections capped at 18, offering courses in Western civilization, literature, science, fine arts, and non-Western civilizations. The faculty offered a concentration in area studies focused on China and India. In fall 1967, students were even offered a study abroad trip to Hong Kong. Another specificity of OU was its School of Performing Arts, which opened in fall 1966. The following year, Meadowbrook Theatre opened with the John Fernald Company, composed of prestigious professional actors who could also teach the 14 students of the new Academy of Dramatic Art. OU was also beginning to venture into graduate programs. In 1965-66, master's degrees were started, and you can see in the next catalog masters in English, math, psychology, chemistry, physics, and teaching. In 1969, the first PhD program was in the planning phase. In short, Oakland's curriculum and its students were maturing. Just to give you one example, engineering students developed an electric car in 1970 to participate in a clean auto race across the country. Fred Phillips, an undergraduate and graduate engineering student here at OU from 65 to 72, contacted me a couple of years ago to tell me it was his car that was used, a Chevrolet Chevy 2. By the way, while he was at Oakland, Fred worked for University Relations as a photographer, and his photos are in the archives, some of them on display here. At the same time, the student body was slowly beginning to diversify. Remember, this was the time of the civil rights movement and, unfortunately, the assassination of Martin Luther King, and in Michigan, civil disturbances in Detroit. At OU, there were very few black students at first. Isaac Jones was the first African American who graduated in 1965. But he was accidentally shot to death in Pontiac 3 years later, which led Chancellor Varner to establish a scholarship in his name and pledged to contribute to, I quote, establishing a community which prizes above all those fundamental qualities of liberty and justice, of human worth and human dignity for everyone. The university also received its first Upward Bound grant in 1966, and 2 years later set up what was then called the Center for Urban Affairs, a center dedicated to diversity and equity, headed by Carl Gregory. Other projects followed, especially in support of nearby Pontiac, to recruit and support black students. The Association of Black Students was founded in 1968, and in 1969, OU established an African American Celebration Month. Aerial photographs like this one show just how small OU still was in the late 60s. As you can see, there are many signs of its recent farming past: barns, fields, dirt roads, the water tower. But what you cannot see on those photos is that there were also significant changes underway that accelerated the modernization of campus. For example, that's when the university was connected to the Detroit water system and Walton Boulevard expanded to a 4-lane divided highway between Squirrel and Adams Roads along the northern border of the campus. On campus, new buildings were coming out of the ground like mushrooms, it seemed. In the second half of the 1960s, OU built several new dorms to increase the student presence. Here is Vandenberg Hall, Dorm 6, which opened in fall 1966. It was by far the largest dorm, housing some 600 students, and had a large dining room overlooking what the students called Bear Lake. The Observer called it a Leviathan. Vandenberg was followed by Hamlin in fall 1968, which added 676 resident students. At the same time, the Oakland Center was no longer big enough to accommodate the growing student body. During the winter 1969 semester, construction started on its expansion to add lounges for commuter students, among other things. There were also new academic buildings. Wilson Hall was completed in spring 1966, followed by Dodge Hall, and construction of the Performing Arts Building, the future Varner Hall, got underway. At the same time, the campus was being beautified. In 1966-67, OU planted approximately 1,000 trees and shrubs in the area adjacent to Vandenberg Hall and Wilson Hall. A baseball diamond, tennis courts, and several soccer fields were added in summer 1968. Some of you may remember the ski slope and ski tow to the south of the intramural sports building. By the way, the second half of the 1960s is when intercollegiate sports took off. As you may know, there had been intramural sports at OU since it opened, but intercollegiate sports were not allowed for the first 5 years. The university resisted pressure to allow them because of its focus on academics. In spring 1964, however, over the objections of the faculty, Chancellor Varner decided to permit intercollegiate athletics, starting with swimming and a few other sports. Men's basketball was started in fall 1966, with the first intercollegiate game occurring on November 25 against Alma College. And the Oakland Observer is a great source to follow their successes and those of other OU athletes. For example, the achievements of OU's men's swimming team under the leadership of Corey Van Fleet have been rightly celebrated. The first team, the OU Tankers, which was formed in fall 1964, broke many records in its first 5 seasons, and for that was inducted in the OU Hall of Fame in 2007. Aside from sports, it does seem that a lot was going on campus based on the many photos in the archives. Bear Lake was a very popular spot, from the tug of mud during its construction to canoe racing, swimming, sunbathing, hockey. or even the reenactment of the Battle of Hastings. There was also the Winter Carnival and the Miss OU pageant, and many more fun activities. Car smashing seems to have been popular for some reason. In between events and classes, students gathered at the Oakland Center to eat, play, watch TV, dance, talk, recruit new members for student associations, and much more. These were the days of turmoil and unrest on American campuses in general, and OU was no exception, although political activism was more restrained than at other universities. In November 1969, 200 OU students went to Washington, D.C. to demonstrate against the war in Vietnam. In May 1970, classes were suspended to protest the Kent State shooting. SDS, Students for a Democratic Society, was active on campus, and the editors of The Observer were politically very engaged. For example, in October 1968, their printer refused to publish an issue on the ground that it contained obscene material. It was in fact a 4-page literary supplement called Painted Black, in which an anonymous black student explained her reactions to white America and white Oakland. The editors found another printer, and the article appeared in the October 4 issue. These engaged students formed a small minority, but they left their mark on campus. You may know that the OU police switched their traditional uniform, which the students had criticized, for slacks and blazers in fall 1968. Overall, the 1965-1970 period is one of maturation for OU. In September 1969, Charlie Brown, who ran the convenience store in the Oakland Center and was a familiar figure for all students, became the first employee to retire. Woody Varner left a few months later. But the OU community did not let him go silently. He was a warm and caring person, and many students begged him to stay. There was even a large demonstration to that effect, to no avail. Woody left in February 1970. Several alumni, like Fred Phillips I mentioned earlier, shared with me a lot of stories and images of those days. Ray Barkalow, a member of the swimming and diving team, shared copies of his own photos of the team. Over the years, and largely because of the history of OU published by Arcadia, I have been in touch with alumni who have added to my knowledge and sometimes rectified some of my mistakes. I'm always interested in more, so if you have any comments or questions, please contact me. In the meantime, enjoy your Oakland University reunion.